Chas. Chas. Archas don vaielo da bues. Archas don. Archas don. Archas don vaielo da bues. Archas don. Archas don. Archas don vaielo da bues. Archas don. Archas don. Archas don vaielo da bues. Archas don. Archas don. Revedun daniura duriuel. Liana veaga locentes. Onias violenti aguel. Pan cantagu aveves. Tre hocia dua golanier. Awelan cura herus. Quei anzari uriter. Urebra cala adave. Fragmentar ante is ergotet. Amanti un arbol babes. Ios menes adana noer. Arjas don viele duaves. Fragmentar ante is ergotet. Amanti un arbol babes. Ios menes adana noer. Archas don vieladoes. Love that one. That's a beautiful one. That is a Breton national song from the peninsula of Ormoricia. Just saved a single lamp from drowning and reconnected her with her friends. Only took 2 minutes. Did you know the enya, the little squiggly above the N in Spanish, actually came from Celtiberian? There's pretty clear evidence of this. It's also in Breton, the language I was just singing in, the Celtic language of the Armorican Peninsula in France. Told you Spanish contains multitudes. Celtiberians invented the gladius that the Romans would basically take around the world, in most cases. French is even considered vulgar Latin. I mean, the Roman Empire never really went away, it just transformed. The English have a hard-on for LARPing as North Rome, trademark, copyright, OC, donut steal. And of course, we know that that Germany was once the Holy Roman Empire, and that is, work of Charlemagne and all that, even though they were outside at the borders of Rome. Rome eventually touched them. And I would say the only... Oh, and of course, Russia. Russia considers itself, at least during the reign of the Tsars, cognate with Caesar's, the Third Rome. Excuse me. The only non-Latin Europeans are probably the Scandos. They probably qualify as not touched by Rome award. Which, who's to say whether that's good or bad? They're basically Arabia too at this point. Did you know that the #1 duolingual language in Sweden is Swedish? Specifically because of all the immigrants going there and trying to learn the language sloppily as they go along. Sort of insulting anti-nationalist behavior eventually does have the pendulum swing of far-right parties rising up. When, of course, you know me, I would prefer to have some level of balance. You know, people are willing to come in and learn the language. Like, all the right-wingers always defend the Cubans. I, for one, don't really find a lot of difference with the Cubans and anybody else in the Caribbean and most other people in Latin America. But at the same time, that goes to say is that, like, there's no special privilege for any of these people. They are all capable of learning. It's just the Cubans were running distinctly away from a place that they'd never be able to contact their families again, and so they don't really have anything to fight for outside of the United States. And it seems like some people just like, good, happy slaves, essentially. Just happy to be outside of a communist dictatorship. Which, as far as communist dictatorships go, Cuba is one of the best ones when it comes to the quality of life that it provided. It even managed to synthesize a lot of Christianity in with its nasty atheist socialist governances. I'm not sure how it's going these days, though. I just know that Castro was a very impressive individual, and you should definitely, actually study the sort of stuff that guy did. He once had a female assassin that was sent to kill him, and he ended up seducing her, and she didn't want to kill him afterwards. It's pretty funny. Say what you want about that, make whatever jokes you want about that, but that's pretty funny. The word Cambrian comes from the old name for Wales, Cambria. That morphed into Cymru, which is a word that you heard me singing in last episode. Cymru. Cambridge. Cambrian. And, I guess they didn't want to build a Cambridge between them and the Anglo-Saxons. I get it. I totally understand. Republican tricolors, not talking about the United States political party, but, basically the revolutionary concept of a republic, of a people's republic, a democratic republic, etc., etc., etc. The Republican tricolors are just the worst as far as flags go. We had flags that actually meant something back in the day. I know, right? Back in my day, we actually had, that wasn't even my day, but back in my day, we had flags that meant something. Beautiful eagles and lions and stuff like that, and they'd be able to tell you what your allegiances is. Now it's just colors. And, you legitimately cannot interpret what it means without asking. Oh, the orange is for Protestants and the green is for Catholics. Fascinating. Hobgoblins versus goblins. Fascinating. Oh, the blue is for the sky and the red is for blood. Great job, France. Had to get rid of the beautiful what are those, trefoils? Fleur-de-lis. Beautiful fleur-de-lis. Had to get rid of that. Can't stand that fleur-de-lis. One of the most beautiful symbols of all time that basically represents ovaries. It's how it's structured. It represents ovaries. Gotta throw that out, And the Armenian one is probably the worst. 3 clashing colors right next to each other. Absolutely hideous. Although I will say the Italian one is pretty good. It just makes you think of food, right? Green, white, and red. You got the sauce, you got the, basil, and then, Swiss cheese or Parmesan grated on top. It makes you think of food. It makes you think of pizza joints. A lot of PR went into that association, so thank an Italian for good food today, and ask him where his church is, and if he doesn't go to church, shame him. Italians need power structures. They need it. They built themselves around power structures for thousands of years. They need power structures. Anyways, I hope, I unironically hope that the guy from West Africa becomes our next pope. That would be the best possible choice, and not for any racial reason, but for the specific reason of that guy is genuinely good. He's genuinely wise. He genuinely has the best interest of Catholics at heart. Now, there is another African cardinal who is out in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he kind of believes in polygamy. Before you say he's super based for annulling all gay marriages on the continent, he kind of believes in polygamy. And so, sorry, my dude, we're not Muslims. That's exactly one of the main reasons why I give Mormonism so much flack. I call them the white Islam. That's just to try and give them a kick in the pants. I actually have a Mormon, family member who I love very much, and her marriage was essentially ruined by the guy trying to bring another woman into the situation. And just his religion says that he can, but she said no way, because she's intelligent. She actually has pride for her family. She's not gonna have her family, her children, be co-owned by another woman, and that's that's a good call. And from what I hear, the guy ended up with nothing. So good job, Mormonism. It is what it is, Did you know that the Polish invented Fahrenheit? It was invented by a Polish dude who later moved to the Netherlands. Did you know that? Poland invented Fahrenheit. Mr. Fahrenheit came from Poland. He was of German stock, but still, Polish. They don't use it, though. They use Celsius, which is very funny. Oh, and aside about flags, give me the titty harp over any Republican tricolor any day of the week. And did you know that the Irish flag with the harp on it is the only flag to feature a musical instrument? Did you know that? It's a shame. People should respect music a little bit more. I guess politics and music are kind of far-flung from each other. Unless you're Irish and music is integrated in every part of your being. I'm so glad Ego Raptor is successful. We all grew up giggling and schmiggling at Funny Guy. He's got a funny voice. He's great at music, and he can homebrew comedy on the spot like few others can. That's venerable, in my opinion. Love that for him. One thing I have in my advantage in our family is we don't eat onions in this house. And I thought, because my dad's allergic to them, and I thought I kind of want, I kind of want caramelized onions from time to time, I'm not going to lie. However, those volatile esters that come out in your sweat make you stinky. I've been told by quite a few girls that I smell good. I'll take it. Oh, and speaking of sniffers, Caroline Leavitt, what is she, the White House Secretary of Propaganda? I don't know what that position's called. All I know is that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was that at one time. That was after Sean Spicer? So I know the people in this particular position, but I don't know what this position is called. Speaker for the president, I guess? It's a strange position. It doesn't really jive with my exacting views on politics. Just like if there's a president has something to say, the president should say it, and then people should not rely on a third party. Just a big issue with that creepy Jew that used to be our immigrations customs head, Steve Miller, lying to Trump. Like, he legitimately lied to Trump and said that he won that Supreme Court decision 9-0, when the actual truth is he lost it 9-0, 0-9. That's, I mean, Musk lied to the president a bunch, and he got called out for it. But Steve Miller, very creepy, demanding, reflexive, temper tantrum throwing sort of guy. I am shocked he's still around Trump. Now we see that people like Mike Pompeo, people like John Bolton, even Jared Kushner has taken a lesser stance on a lot of things. They've all, receded back. And that's really good. That's one of the reasons why I'm more happy, much more happy with Trump 2.0 as opposed to the first Trump administration. There's also other people that I could list and name, but, it's better to have a Hegseth than a Bolton. It's better to have a Gabbard than a Pompeo in every single way you could possibly conceive. And you know my feelings about Hegseth. Not a perfect man by any standards, but I genuinely believe he does not want his soldier brothers to die in a needless war on behalf of a country that genuinely hates us and wants us to die and be destroyed slowly from within, if not just outright, if we don't do exactly what they want. And God only knows what happens when they get what they want. God only knows. It would be an absolute nightmare, because the exact same people believe that they've been oppressed by the entire world, when we can clearly see them praying for the destruction of over half the planet. Like, I'd say 2/3 of the planet's probably how much hates Israel. And God only knows what would happen if that evil state triumphed in their goals. Anyways, Elon Musk is crashing out bigly. I still can't believe there are real people out there, and there are, that actually went out and spent $90,000 on a Cybertruck after Elon Musk sig-hailed with all the energy he could muster, specifically because it was dog whistling to them. And it's funny when you say the words like dog whistle, because it's supposed to be something inaudible to the human ear, and he just straight up flashed the Roman as hard as he possibly could. People are putting up still images of other people raising their hand, waving. That's originally what I thought the zero dash was a wave. Hi, stuff like that. The guy legitimately gave one of the most. The only thing that would be even more sure is if he like did it like Hitler, which is like stiff-armed, stiff-chested. And no, that was a legitimately. I'm standing in a crowd in Nuremberg, or Brandenburg, and I'm saluting der Führer, which at the end of the day is like everybody in the Dark Enlightenment, Apparently he went to a Dark Enlightenment orgy and he just stood in the corner in bondage gear. So it's weird whether he's like a cuck or what's going on there. I'm not quite sure. And I'm not sure if I want to know, but I do know he is 100% in the last couple of days confirmed that he is stepping back from all government roles, including Doge. And he's just going to let the Zoomers, he's going to let the Zoomy Zoom, young 20-year-olds, teenagers, handle a very important position that hopefully becomes more and more sidelined and unable to pass through its extrajudicial activities. Thanks, Obama, for creating that. Thanks, Obama. Thanks, Obama. Anyways, going back to what I was talking about regarding Nazis, survey says you're too easily manipulated to tell anybody much at all, unfortunately. Oh, you're giggling while making things worse? That'll work out great for you. Almost like you don't actually care about your stated goals. You just want to have a fun time on the way, and that's, hey man, you can have a fun time for a short time. You can fool some of your friends. Can't fool everybody. You can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. Something like that. I mean, it's like the left is dunking on Trump for tariffing penguins, right? That's the line that I keep on hearing over and over and over again. And it's the same sort of impotent wail you hear about a lot of people who are obviously on the losing side of something. Nobody cares. It's not the one you think it is. They're just venting their anxiety about being losers in the moment and screeching to the stars. Real cooked behavior. Anybody but Trump would be more partisan with the established Democratic side, with the establishment as it's perceived, or as it's manifested itself, not just how it's perceived, but what it actually is. Not just, definitely not how it's perceived, because people don't know what the establishment is. People think that it is Trump. They talk about him like some sort of an eldritch demon, orange man in the White House. They talk about him like he's Elder Palmer Eldridge. But he's actually, in many ways, cutting against the grain. He's rocking the apple cart a bit. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's going to be our savior against this stuff. The more Zionists get slotted into positions where previously American patriots were, which is something that seems to be slowly happening, the less of a chance we actually have. Which is why it's very important for people to not accept this weird propaganda that Israel is our buddies. They're going to drive our country into utter destruction. It isn't just a thing about, oh, Zionists were mean to me online, Zionists are saying things about Gaza I don't like, oh, they're killing children of Muslims and stuff like that. It isn't just that. It's the long-term ramifications of having them secure more and more power in our government is complete and utter destruction. Let's get into that a little bit. Speaking of cooked, DeSantis stole $10 million from Medicaid to pour into his wife's Hope Florida money laundering operation, which is essentially a Florida tradition at this point. Rick Scott pulled off the largest Medicare fraud scheme in history, just like John McCain did when he was one of the big five, who did the same. He had been the previously largest contender, and then Rick Scott, and then in 2022, Rick Scott stole a whole bunch of money from the Republican coffers. So at the same time, DeSantis and Rick Scott were stealing a ton of money. My state was transforming into a Zionist hub. I'm not joking about that. And things really went downhill. Really went downhill. Some of the most psychotic, stupid, selfish, thieving, lying people you have ever seen flooding into my state. And Rick Scott and DeSantis getting rewarded huge for it. Gotta look out for that. Have to look out for that. I'm telling you, I'm saying this with somebody from real physical objective experience. You have to look out for that. And what they're doing to that Miss Rachel lady who was just praying that children don't die, they're lying about the children that are dying that she's praying for. They're lying about her. They're saying she should be investigated. They're saying that she's a Hamas sympathizer. It's just so evil and it's so insulting. And I really, really hope people, and they're waking up to this. But this is the biggest stand that people need to take against. They don't need to take a stand against Trump. They need to take a stand against the Zionism in our, the rot, the cancer that has infected our country for 30, 40 years now. Really, really becoming malignant. Maybe being kind of like a sleeper tumor for a while and then turning malignant, turning very hard in a way. As I said, it's no coincidence last episode, it's no coincidence that the Soviet Union died and then all of a sudden Israel is just up on the main stage doing all sorts of stuff. This anti-Christian force, pooled back in. And now Russia itself is pitted in a proxy war against Israeli forces for long periods of time, as well as ISIS, which I believe is a proxy of Israeli forces in the CIA. Yeah. They can cut Medicare and Medicaid funding if they force politicians to repay all the money that they stole. That would fund it for a while. But stealing from it, then cutting it to the bone, it's hypocritical. It's hypocritical. As I said, I don't ever want to receive any welfare in my life. But what I see politicians doing and how they're talking about it, and at this point, this particular point is especially pointed against Republican politicians, is extremely hypocritical. They steal millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars out of those exact programs through fraudulent agencies. And then they advocate for cutting it because it's so wasteful. You are the waste. Just like, Elon Musk, he is the waste. He is the waste, fraud, and abuse. He is the welfare queen of all welfare queens. And on top of that, he's an immigrant who's taking advantage of our country. Bit of hypocrisy there, guys. Bit of hypocrisy there. Might want to clean that up. And here's the thing. DeSantis, that greasy meatball, is just an East Coast Gavin Newsom. Another greaseball. He's doing the exact same thing, sucking up all the fresh water and selling it off, primarily is to Israel and Saudi Arabia, cutting firefighting to the bone, clear-cutting and poisoning the plants that hold moisture in the ground, inviting everybody around the world except Andrew Tate, I guess. Credit where credit is due, to take advantage of us, take advantage of our state, our beautiful, beautiful state, and all that it has to offer. To take advantage of it, to parasitize it before leaving, and give nothing back. And letting Space Force, SpaceX, and military contractors dump and steal whatever they want. This mass dumping is exactly what prompted RFK to loosen the federal restrictions and regulations around how much sewage can be contained in the water. It's because they are dumping sewage everywhere, and he did that. And that is just astounding hypocrisy from a waterkeeper. But it's not surprising for a Zionist, and this is exactly why this is a message to preach, 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 scream it from the rooftop, scream it to the high heavens. It's very important that we do not lose this war, even if we lose a few battles along the way. It is very important. And he's got Rabbi Shmuley in his ear, and Rabbi Shmuley, as you know, contains Jeffrey Epstein's soul from the phylactery, passed into him by a powerful Talmudic wizard. You gotta keep aware of these things. Also, the autism database is just stealing intellectual property from kiwi farms. That's not fair. Give credit where it's due. You can't simultaneously blacklist Noel from financial services while stealing his idea. It's not fair. You know, Bezos tripping in a hole is more humanizing than an actual retard billionaire like in Elon Musk pretending to be a genius when he's not. He's also been pretty responsible in the process of bringing a ton of jobs back to the area after Elon Musk drove tons of NASA families out of the state after Obama granted him private rights to the public contracts for NASA. And he drove those families, I know for a fact, to Washington, Colorado, Texas, and California. He's a twice-over blight on our area. That's a fact, Jack. It gives me very little pleasure to say this. I don't like bullying retarded people. One of the reasons why I genuinely do not want to talk about H3H3. I do not like bullying retarded people. Especially if it makes this champagne socialist and this weirdo, this cuck degenerate, look any better. But, you know, if I'm calling balls and strikes, and I'm being objective, you know, Ethan lost. And Ethan continues to lose the more he freaks out day after day. Instead of just letting it go and being like, yeah, that was a pretty decisive strike, man, you know. I'll get you next time, and then just moving on from that particular point. Because there's nothing that he's released so far that has gotten close to healing that wound. Oh, well. I'd say it's also accurate that people can't use space for much more than an amusement park ride. You know, if you're wondering what Bezos actually does. He creates a tremendous amount of equipment, and he's manufacturing rockets, and I predict in the next 10 years he will take over for a lot of what Elon Musk has been doing since Obama, because Elon Musk has embarrassed himself so very, very much. So very, very much. The technology Musk is coasting on is a century old. NASA has some complex sensors that are much, much newer out there on their satellites that transmit back a lot of valuable data. But one important thing it shows is there is no life anywhere near us, no matter what insane UFO people with no clear-cut evidence are screaming about all the time. You know, with their zero-G Chinese drone crap that they're pulling up specifically to manufacture a claim for casus belli and a war with China over a phantasm. You know, this is the weapons of mass destruction argument. The only thing we can do is spend more resources than it equates to gather inert resources from outer space. Using other people's resources to lay claim to those exact resources is the ultimate dream of people like Musk. But humans can't do it. It can barely be done in the lifespan of one benefactor. And so, as I've outlined, the immortality potion of Neuralink is their main goal. I feel bad for ranch heads. Since like 2014 or so, more and more soy has been replaced with roundup-ready soy. And this is when people really started complaining about soy. And though they were wrong about the xenoestrogens, they were 1000% right about the fact that people should, in general, avoid soy and they would be healthier. That's why people, if they listen to that, they felt better and healthier. And so they propagated that rumor, that myth about the xenoestrogen meshing with our body, which it doesn't. It's actually good for breast cancer. Healthy, non-poison soy is actually good for breast cancer based on the studies. So regular estrogen is carcinogenic. So the xenoestrogen has nothing. It's very little play on our estrogenergic centers, I'd say. Like, you got to look at the people in China who've been eating soy for a long period of time. Those, like the Mongols, the sumo wrestlers, those end up being the most burly of the Chinese, as opposed to the ones that ate high-yield rice for 1,000 years and then turned into what people on, you know, certain, what people would call bugmen, which I don't agree with that terminology. I think a lot of Chinese people are very intelligent. They're not showboaty about it, and it's just like the people who are showboaty about it, they're probably less intelligent than your average Chinese person. They're very intelligent people. People in the Far East are very intelligent. Just eating high-yield cereals, which is rice, grain, etc., that's been bred specifically to be high-yield and low nutrients. So putting all of its cultivation strength, its gene strength, into weight as opposed to quality, that's a big thing. So you gotta avoid that. That's very bad for you. That's very bad for your progeny. And glyphosate, which is Roundup, destroys the nerves connecting people's spines to their brain. You don't want that. What I do is take some mustard, take some honey, mix it up in a bowl, and you're golden. I'm sorry, I don't have a substitute for ranch. Real Aleister Crowley heads peeve they can't have they white goo. Alright, y'all. That's good for today. Hope to come at you later. Some cool stuff. Cheers.